Joining me today is TIM SEARFOSS. He's the director, producer, and writer of films such as Fireworks, The Greatest Coach of All Time, and many more. But today we'll be talking about the award-winning 2021 film, Break Every Chain, a true story of a rookie cop that lost his way through addiction and found his need for Jesus. Tim, thank you for joining me today on the call.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So happy to have you, Tim. You directed the film Break Every Chain. Why did you pick this book to make into a film?
I really connected with the idea of this a person, resisting God, and it's not a normal Christian story. Usually you hear the fairy tale, oh, I heard God and then I became a Christian, but in this case, this guy had to hit rock bottom, and God, you could see how God was moving through him. And I feel like his struggle, even though he was a police officer and the things he saw and the pain and the trauma that he experienced, I think it still resonates with people, even if you haven't been through that, it helps you, first of all, understand what it's like to be a police officer, what their day-to-day stuff is like, and the things that they see. It gives you a little more sympathy, to what it's like to be a first responder, and then you kind of forget that these people have to take this home with them and they have to figure out how to cope with it. And if you don't have God, coping is going to be very difficult, very, very difficult. And that's what happened here. He couldn't cope. And I just love how, he turned his life around, but it was still kind of messy, and it was a journey. And I feel like that's more authentic, more true to life, of how conversion happens and how we, our encounter with God is like a journey. It's not just one event that happens, So I really loved all those elements, and then seeing who he was before and seeing that transformation, meeting him and his family, and then seeing how he, I was like, man, this story is going to be, really incredible. And it's a little risky, I was like a little worried that the Christian audience would, not be okay with it, but I think that they understood, hey, this guy's on a journey and you have to go to the darkness in order to ascend into the light, and that's what I loved about his journey, was that that whole range of emotions and all the things that happen, and so many people can relate to, and so it's really, really moved me and impacted me, his story did.
Yes, and you know what hooked me into that, when he just was that rookie cop and he was like so on fire to be a great cop, right? So then he has that first hook of an encounter of reality of what it's like to be a cop. He's really seeking God here as the movie moves along, and Dean Cain plays in it, and he's the pastor who is leading him along and through the story, and his relationship with his family, his wife. All these things were happening, and and it just led him to a relationship with Jesus. And I think that everybody should be seeing this movie. It makes me feel like I'm stepping into this man's life. I just want to know from you, has this movie changed lives?
Man, so the journey of changing lives started with my own life. It changed my life. I didn't understand, what first responders went through, and working on the film, interviewing him, interviewing other first responders, I started to realize that this is not a unique story. This story is the story of first responders, and as a matter of fact, our first screening that we had of the film, we had a lady stand up and she says, I am in charge of reaching out to 200 first responders. And she said, and their story is this story, substance abuse, trying to self-medicate because of the trauma, then the collapse of their family structure, divorce, infidelity. All of these things are very real in first responders, because what they're having to deal with is the human body is not prepared for that. It's not designed to do that, and especially if you don't have God. If you don't have God, you're powerless. You're just gonna hit that rock bottom like he did, and sadly it happens to a lot of first responders. So through making this movie, I've encountered so many people who have said, that is our story, that is my story, that really resonated with me. We've had people who watched the film and they said, you know what, I didn't realize I was an alcoholic. They watch the film and they go, oh no, I have a problem. and we've had other people who are married, who have had challenges, and they see the film and they go, maybe there's hope for us, for our marriage, and which is true. There is hope, and so it's been affecting everyone, along that journey. We've had so many people come forward, just speaking out about how we had one lady who reached out. It was very touching. She reached out and she said that her husband was a first responder and he committed suicide, and that she had been blaming God the entire time. And one of the themes of this movie is that I really wanted to connect with people, because we forget this as Christians. There's a reason for evil, and that evil isn't God. That evil is Satan. We have a person that is responsible for that. So in the film, Dean Cain says, when are you going to stop blaming God? This isn't God didn't do this. The devil did this, and so she saw that and she realized, my husband, God didn't kill my husband. My husband, committed suicide because the devil was at work and getting involved. So that for her was eye-opening, and changed her perspective on what had happened. Really, it's been affecting so many people. It's very moving. Very moving story. And to hear, I mean, we had another lady who had 5 miscarriages, and she came up to us in tears, and, I can relate to the film. I know what that feels like. As a matter of fact, even while we were filming that particular scene where there was a miscarriage, one of our audio persons who was running the boom was a woman, and she was in tears the entire scene. It was so moving, and it touches that part. And I think that's what Break Every Chain is doing, is it hits so many different parts of our experience of in life, and it's raw and it's gritty, and it really really offers hope, though. It offers that hope that says, hey, look, just because you really messed up your life doesn't mean it's gone. There's still hope. And that's what's so great about his journey and about his story, is that at the end of it, there's redemption. At the end of it, he does escape this terrible, demonic forces pulling him down, and trying to trap him, and he escapes, and God, through God, he gets saved, and he becomes, a better person at the end of it.
Yes. Well, you know what? While we're talking about journeys, let's talk about your journey. How did you get where you are in film? How did God lead you there? I'm really want to hear this story.
Sure. Okay. So my parents are, my dad's an engineer. My mom was born in Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela, and they didn't know what to do with a creative, artsy kid, So, and when you work in the church, everybody says, why don't you make a church video, that kind of thing. And I really didn't want to do that. I saw art as art, and growing up, I hadn't touched a camera or anything. I wanted to be an animator. I was a kind of guy who was always drawing, that kind of thing. When I hit high school, I went on a trip to Mexico with my grandfather, and there's these beautiful mountains in Mexico, and we're driving along, and I said, hey, Grandpa, stop the car. I want to take a picture of this mountain, huge, beautiful mountain. I get out and I have one of those, I'm kind of old, so I have those film point and shoot disposable cameras, So I get out there and I pointed at the mountain, and it only is taking a picture of just the very tip of the top of the mountain. And I'm going, that doesn't do it justice, So my grandpa says, here, try this. And he hands me what's called an SLR, single lens reflex camera. It's kind of like a professional kind of looking camera. And it has a wide angle lens, which means you can see everything. So the moment I hold that up and I see it, I mean, my world changed,
There you go.
Now I could see the whole mountain, oh, this is what I want to capture, and I said, what is this magic, So my grandpa didn't get his camera back. I started getting into photography, I really dug deep into it. I started taking lots of photos, started winning awards, and then kind of sort of a similar story. My sister ends up getting a little handycam video camera. Believe it or not, that's the first time I'd ever touched one. And so I said, hey, why don't we make a movie? So we made a silly movie. I storyboarded it, a little home movie, get all the, all your sisters and brothers and whatever, and I was hooked. I said, you're not getting your camera back. I had been making videos for fun. And one day I watched this movie called Groundhog Day. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So at the end of Groundhog Day, I don't know why, but it just clicked in my head. And that I need to figure out my life. Like I need to know, like I need to have like a bucket list of things that I want to accomplish, you know? And at that moment, I sat down and I wrote down all the things that I was good at, things that I loved. I loved music. You know, I play piano and all that. So I love music. I love art. I love photography. What is a job that I could have that has all these things connected? I love storytelling. And then the light bulb went off and it was filmmaking, you know? So I said, you know what? This is a big decision. Am I going to really pursue this or not? So I prayed and I said, God, I'm going to pray and fast, and I'm going to ask you to tell me whether this is what I'm supposed to do or not. And so I had like a regular 9 to 5 job at the time, and you know, I would be praying during lunch break and all that, you know, and then I get a call out of nowhere from somebody I hadn't spoken to ever. Hey Tim, I heard you like movies. Do you want to help us make a movie? And I said, how, what? How did you get my number? Who are you? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was, for me, that was God going, yes, this is what I want you to do. And he gave me that confirmation, you know, and
Yes.
I've held on to that my whole life, you know, since that moment, you know, and then I've been, you know, all in from that moment on.
I love the way God, like, put some things into your life that you're like, where did that come from? Right. But he always surprises us. He gives us the best, right?
Yes.
So my last question to you is, what would you like to leave this audience with?
Ooh. Well, I guess we could talk about the arts because that's the field I'm in, you know. And I think a common misconception for Christians about the arts is that the arts should only be for God, you know. And I think art is beautiful. I think sometimes a painting of a landscape is beautiful, you know. And I would speak to the creators out there, you know, don't feel like you have to do something for God, because the reality is if you're a Christian, it's going to come out, you know, that is going to come out, and you can't avoid it. It's just going to be obvious. And sometimes we need stories that are romantic. Sometimes we need stories that are inspiring. Sometimes we need stories that do tell people about, you know, other things. So I think when you see my films in the future, you're going to notice a variety of you know, things, because it's, for me, it's just, is it a great story, you know, and does it say something that really communicates to us, you know, about our essence. And I mean, for instance, like I think honestly, Armageddon, I say this all the time, Armageddon, you know, Michael Bay movie, I think that's a Christian movie. You know, and people go, well, I don't know why. And I said, well, wait a minute. So there's a scene where the captain is on this meteor. This meteor is going to collide with the earth, and everything has gone wrong. He's over here drilling, and that's it. Everything has collapsed. And what does he do? He looks up to God and he says, I could use a little help right now, you know?
Oh,
And then the thing winds up and now it starts working, you know? And I say,
yeah,
that's a Christian movie. That's a, you know, that's a great example of, you know, so not all movies have to be, you know, super on the nose, you know?
yeah,
But for me at this moment in time, I love these stories that are real, that are, you know, authentic, and come from a place that's, you know, raw, and because I think that the modern audiences are, you know, we do live in the real world. We don't live in fairyland, you know, and we're used to seeing the grime and all that. And then I think if you take that out, it makes it a little disingenuous, you know, it becomes a little cartoony, or, you know, a little bit, you know, but yeah, so I would say to any filmmaker or writer out there, you know, write what you love. If you're a Christian, it's going to come out, you know, and you can't avoid it. You know, it's going to be there. And I think that the arts, you know, are coming back, you know, for Christians, are finally, you know, opening their eyes to, hey, you know, we can have good content, we can have good films, you know, we can
yeah.
have some excellence, you know, in the arts.